My parents, who hadn't spoken to me in 5 years, suddenly demanded a family meeting after I bought a new car. They wanted my money. I walked in with a $15 surprise they never saw coming, and I watched their greedy world fall apart. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The call came on a Tuesday, the same day the Porsche was delivered. For 5 years, my phone had held a tomb-like silence from my family. No calls on my birthday, no texts at Christmas, not even a "how are you" when a global pandemic was shutting down the world. I had made my peace with it. The silence, once a gaping wound, had scarred over into a hard, protective layer of peace. Then the car arrived. A gleaming, sapphire blue 911, the very definition of an indulgence. It was the first truly frivolous thing I had ever bought myself. After a decade of 80-hour workweeks, of pouring every cent and sleepless night into my data management software, my company had been acquired. The numbers in my bank account had so many zeros they looked like a typo. The car was a celebration, a tangible symbol that I had made it entirely on my own. I was sitting in the driver's seat, breathing in that intoxicating new car smell when my phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen in half a decade. Mom. My first coherent thought was that someone must have died. Why else would she call? I thumbed the accept button, my pulse a frantic drum against my ribs. Abigail, her voice was bright, chirpy, as if we had spoken yesterday. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of the chasm of time and silence that lay between us. Mom, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Abigail, sweetheart, I saw the news, she trilled. A Porsche, my goodness. Your cousin's son posted a picture. It's all over the family grapevine. I gripped the steering wheel, the smooth leather suddenly feeling cold. She hadn't called to see if I was alive. She called because she saw a car. We're having a family meeting this Saturday, she continued, her tone shifting from bubbly to businesslike. At the house, 6 o'clock. It's time to reconnect. Your father and Archie are so excited to hear all about your success. My stomach turned to ice. A family meeting. I knew those words. They were a performance, a stage play my mother, Samantha, produced whenever she needed to rally the family for her true priority, my brother, Archie. I don't know if I can, Mom. It's been a long time, I managed. Don't be silly, Abigail, it's Saturday. We're your family, she said, a sharp, familiar edge entering her voice. We have so much to discuss. This success of yours, it changes things. It's wonderful. 6 o'clock, don't be late. The line clicked dead before I could reply. I sat in the driver's seat of my new car, the silence of the garage suddenly deafening. The joy of the purchase evaporated, replaced by a cold, sinking dread. She hadn't asked how I was. She hadn't said she missed me. She had summoned me. I looked at the dashboard clock, the bright digital numbers blurring through a sudden, hot sting of tears. It wasn't just the call. It was the timing. It was the fact that for 5 years, my existence had been an inconvenience to them. Now, a car, a single, shiny object, had made me a priority. They didn't want me. They wanted what I had. My mind flashed back to the last time I had seen them. I was 33, my fledgling startup was bleeding money, and I was days from missing payroll for my 2 employees. I had driven to their house, my hands shaking, to ask for a small loan, not a gift, a loan. Absolutely not, my mother had said, not even looking up from her tablet where she was browsing for new patio furniture. We don't mix family and money, Abigail. It's tacky. Besides, my father, Lucas, had chimed in, adjusting his glasses. This little computer hobby of yours isn't a real business. It's time you grew up, got a real job, like your brother. Like Archie. My brother, the 30-year-old visionary, whose series of failed crypto schemes and NFT art galleries had been funded entirely by our parents. Just 1 week before I'd asked for that loan, they had remortgaged their house, their paid-off house, to buy Archie a luxury SUV because image is everything in his line of work. I had walked out of their house that day and never looked back. I slept in my office for 3 months, lived on instant noodles, and coded until my vision blurred. I secured a new round of funding on my own. I built my company from nothing, with no one to thank but myself. And now, they wanted a family meeting. I started the Porsche. The engine roared to life, a deep, powerful purr that vibrated through the seat. The sound cleared my head. The tears dried. The D. Red solidified into something else, something hard and cold and clear. Resolve. Okay, Mom, I whispered to the empty garage. You want a family meeting? You'll get one, but you forgot who you're dealing with. The betrayal wasn't just the 5 years of silence. It was the 5 seconds it took for them to break it the moment they smelled money. The days leading up to the meeting were a masterclass in psychological warfare, executed with a sickeningly sweet touch. My mother, Samantha, had apparently decided that the 5-year estrangement was just a silly misunderstanding, a pause in our regularly scheduled programming. My phone, once so quiet, began to buzz with a relentless, cloying stream of affection. Found this old photo of you at the science fair, sweetie. So proud of my brilliant girl. A picture of me at 12, holding a ribbon with a younger Archie mugging for the camera in front of my project. Your father and I were just talking about how we always knew you'd be a star. We should have dinner at the Monarch to celebrate just us. Each text was a small, calculated pinprick, designed to wear down my defenses, to rewrite history, to make me forget the years of being told my nerdy hobby was a waste of time. It was a performance, and it was insulting. The most unnerving interaction, however, came from my brother. Archie sent me a text on Thursday night. It was just a link to a glossy, ridiculous article about the top 10 crypto utopias being built in 2025. I didn't reply. He texted again an hour later. Big things coming, sis. Biggest one yet. We need to talk. A cold shiver went down my spine. We need to talk. That was Archie's signature line, the preamble to a financial request. It was the same thing he'd said before he'd borrowed my college textbook money and never returned it, the same thing he'd said before he'd conned our grandparents into funding a revolutionary avocado toast delivery app that never delivered a single avocado. I stared at the text, the blue light glare hurting my eyes. They weren't even being subtle. The call from my mother, the sudden flood of fake nostalgia, and now the priming from Archie, it was a coordinated attack. They were setting the stage for an ambush. And all I could think about was the one crucial thing they had forgot. This thought had been my companion for the last 2 weeks, ever since the acquisition papers were signed. It had been there when I'd met with my legal team. It had been there when I'd signed the final documents, my hands steady. They had forgotten one crucial thing. They thought of me as the quiet, awkward, nerdy daughter. The one who could be safely ignored because she never made a fuss. The one who would sit quietly at Thanksgiving while Archie dominated the conversation with his grandiose, empty boasts. They had dismissed me so completely for my entire life that it never occurred to them that the same brain that built a multi-million-dollar tech company from scratch might also be capable of seeing exactly what they were doing. They saw the Porsche and assumed I was a naive tech nerd who had stumbled into money. They saw me as a new, untapped resource, a bank. On Friday, the day before the meeting, my mother called again. Abigail, darling, I'm just planning the menu for tomorrow. I'm making your favorite, the beef roast. My favorite was, and always had been, lasagna. The beef roast was Archie's favorite. He was a notoriously picky eater, and the entire family's menu had revolved around his preferences for as long as I could remember. That sounds lovely, Mom, I said, my voice flat. Oh, it will be. We're all just so excited to have you home. It's been too long. Her voice was dripping with a sincerity that was utterly counterfeit. It's time for this family to finally be a family again, to support each other. You understand, don't you, dear? Support each other, there it was, the hook baited and cast. I understand perfectly, Mom, I said. I've actually been working on something myself. A surprise, something I'm very excited to share with you all tomorrow. It's about support and the future. A surprise? Oh, how wonderful, she gushed, and I could practically hear the dollar signs spinning in her head. We can't wait. As I hung up, I looked at the sleek, leather-bound portfolio sitting on my desk. Inside were the finalized, notarized, and utterly irrevocable documents that I had spent the last 2 weeks preparing with a team of the best trust and estate lawyers in the city. You're right, Mom, I thought, a humorless smile touching my lips. You can't wait. They saw the car, they saw the headlines about the acquisition, but they had forgotten one crucial thing. I was a software engineer. I was a strategist. I built systems with impenetrable firewalls, and I had just built the most important one of my life. They thought they were luring me into a trap. They had no idea they were walking into mine. My childhood home hadn't changed, which in itself felt like a statement. The same manicured lawn, the same imposing oak door, the same faint, lingering smell of my mother's expensive and overpowering floral perfume in the entryway. As I stepped inside, Samantha, my mother, rushed forward to embrace me. It was like being hugged by a mannequin. She was all stiff angles and expensive fabric, her arms barely squeezing before she pulled back, holding me at arm's length. "Abigail, you look well," she said, her eyes doing a rapid, appraising scan. They weren't looking at my face, they were cataloging my clothes, my watch, the designer handbag I'd bought with my second paycheck from the new consulting gig. Her smile was a painted-on grimace of approval. "That's a lovely bag. It's so good to finally see you taking an interest in your appearance." This was Samantha. Her profession as a lifestyle blogger was a recent affectation, but her obsession with status and appearance was lifelong. She curated her life and her family for an imaginary audience. Everything was about how it looked. My success, in her eyes, wasn't about my achievement. It was that I had finally produced a result she could brag about. "Dad, Archie," I said, nodding toward the living room. My father, Lucas, gave me a short, awkward wave from his armchair. "Abigail, good to see you." Lucas had spent 30 years as a sales director, and he still carried the air of a man who was perpetually assessing your value. He was a passive enabler to my mother's active narcissism, a quiet, solid yes man to her every whim. His support for Archie was, I always suspected, a way of funding the life of confidence and risk he'd never had the nerve to live himself. And then there was Archie. He was lounging on the sofa, scrolling through his phone, and didn't even bother to stand up. "Hey, sis, heard you're rolling in it now. Nice." Archie, at 35, still had the rebellious, entitled air of a teenager. He was dressed in what I assumed was his visionary uniform, a designer hoodie, ridiculously expensive sneakers, and a look of profound boredom, as if he was doing us all a favor by being present. His entire career was a string of buzzwords: crypto, NFTs, metaverse, all designed to sound impressive and complicated, all culminating in dramatic failure, and all funded by our parents. He was a black hole for money, and my mother and father orbited him like devoted, mindless moons. "Dinner is almost ready," Samantha chirped, gesturing me toward the dining room. "Archie, Lucas, come, let's not keep Abigail waiting." The table was set with the good china, the one reserved for holidays or impressing people. This was, without a doubt, an impress and ambush maneuver. We sat. My mother launched into a breathless monologue about her blog's recent collab with a local boutique, while my father asked a few perfunctory questions about my work, his eyes glazing over when I used words like data architecture. Archie just kept tapping on his phone under the table. The beef roast was served. It was, as always, dry. "So, Abigail," my mother said, dabbing her lips with a linen napkin as the main course was cleared. Her voice took on the low, serious tone she used for family business. "It is just wonderful to have you back. We've missed you terribly." I met her gaze. "Have you?" She gave a nervous little laugh. "Of course, dear, of course, and we are just so incredibly proud of you, all that. Coding, it finally paid off." "It did," I said. Which brings us, my father cut in, leaning forward. He was in sales mode now. To the future, to family, and to opportunities. Archie finally pocketed his phone. He sat up, a predatory gleam in his eye. This was it, the pitch. "The thing is, sis," Archie began, his voice oozing a practiced, casual charm, "I'm on the verge of something massive, bigger than anything before. It's a new token, an NFT-backed environmental credit system. It's going to revolutionize, well, everything." I just stared at him. An NFT-backed environmental credit system. "Exactly," he said, apparently taking my deadpan repetition as a sign of interest. "It's brilliant, but it needs a serious liquidity injection to get off the ground. The kind of capital that," he gestured vaguely at me, "well, the kind of capital you're now familiar with." My mother beamed, placing her hand on his. "Your brother is a genius, Abigail. He just needs a start, the kind of start you had." The audacity of that statement hit me like a physical blow. The start I had. The start where I worked 3 jobs to pay for my community college classes. The start where I slept on a borrowed air mattress in a tiny office. The start where my own parents told me to stop playing games and get a real job just a week after liquidating their assets for him. "Is that so?" I kept my voice perfectly level. "We were thinking," my father said, steepling his fingers, "that an investment of, say, 5 million would be a good, solid number. A family investment. You help your brother, you help the family. We all rise together." They all looked at me, their faces a mask of greedy, expectant smiles. They had no shame. They had no self-awareness. They had just laid out, in plain terms, that the only reason I was sitting at this table was to be their new financier. I let the silence hang in the air for a long, heavy moment. I watched their smiles begin to waver. "But they had forgotten one crucial thing," I said, almost to myself. "What's that, dear?" my mother asked, her smile tightening. I reached down to the briefcase I had placed by my chair. I clicked it open. They forgot who I am. The shift from passive victim to active strategist hadn't happened in a single moment. It had been a slow, cold burn that started the day I walked out of their house 5 years ago. But the plan, the clever trap, as I'd come to think of it, began the second I hung up the phone with my mother after her family meeting summons. I didn't just sit and wait for the ambush. I prepared for it. The day after the call, I wasn't just test driving my Porsche. I was on a conference call with my legal and financial team. "So, let me get this straight," said Anne, my lead attorney, a woman with a mind like a steel trap. "After 5 years of total silence, your family calls you for a meeting the day they see you've bought an expensive car." "That's the long and short of it," I said, pacing my minimalist living room. "My brother is a serial failure entrepreneur. My parents are his enablers. They're going to ask me for money, a lot of money. And you don't want to give it to them," Anne stated. "I want to do more than that," I said, stopping to look out the window at the city skyline. "I want to make it impossible for them to ever ask again. I want to take this power they think I have, this money, and put it so far out of their reach that the very idea of it becomes a monument to their own greed." Anne was silent for a beat. "I like it. What do you have in mind?" "My payout," I said. "The liquid portion from the acquisition, it's just over $15 million. I want it gone, all of it." "Gone where?" "I want to create an irrevocable charitable trust," I said, the words tasting like freedom. "I want to fund STEM scholarships, specifically for underprivileged women. The kind of young women who have a brilliant idea and no family to back them up. The kind of woman I was." This was my leverage. This was the crucial thing they had forgotten. They assumed my new wealth was a liquid pool of cash I was sitting on, ready to be ladled out. They couldn't conceive of a world where I would already have a plan for it, a plan that didn't involve them. For the next 3 days, my condo became a war room. Lawyers and financial advisors came and went. We drafted the trust deed. We defined the mission. We selected a board. We structured the endowment so that the $15 million principal was untouchable. generating interest to fund the scholarships in perpetuity. It was airtight, it was binding, and most importantly, it was irrevocable. Once I signed it, not even I could reverse it. But I wasn't just building a defense. I went on the offense. While the lawyers drafted, I did what I do best. I dug for data. I hired a private investigator, a discreet professional recommended by Anne. "I want you to find out everything you can about my brother, Archie," I instructed him. "His businesses, his investors, his debts." It didn't take long. The man wasn't a criminal mastermind. He was just a sloppy, entitled leech. The report came back on Friday morning, less than 36 hours before the meeting. It was worse and better than I could have imagined. Archie wasn't just failing, he was in deep trouble. His latest crypto venture had collapsed, and he hadn't just lost our parents' money. He had conned a handful of other local, small-time investors, friends of our father's from his old golf club. They were furious. They were threatening to sue. One of them, a retired dentist, was threatening to go to the DA. Archie wasn't just looking for seed money for a new revolution. He was looking for a bailout. He was desperate. And my success had appeared like a divine miracle, a lifeline sent to save him from the consequences of his own actions. The pieces clicked into place. The family meeting wasn't just an opportunity, it was a desperate, last-ditch recovery mission. They weren't asking me to invest. They were planning to use me to plug the hole in Archie's sinking ship, to pay off his debts so the family image wouldn't be tarnished. I closed the Pies report. I looked at the finalized trust documents on my desk, waiting for my signature. I signed every page. I now had the $15 million surprise. I had the legal documents, and I had the truth about Archie's massive opportunity. I was no longer the daughter they remembered. I wasn't the passive, quiet girl who could be ignored. I was the CEO who had just negotiated a 9-figure acquisition. I was a strategist, and I was walking into that family meeting not as their daughter, but as their opponent. I was walking in with a trap of my own. I let their demand hang in the air, the request for $5 million echoing in the suddenly silent dining room. My mother's smile was a rictus of expectation. My father looked at me with the practiced, neutral expression of a salesman about to close a deal. Archie just looked impatient. "$5 million, I repeated, my voice calm. I picked up my wine glass and took a slow sip. "That's a very specific number." "It's the bare minimum, really," Archie said, leaning forward, an oily sincerity in his voice. "To get the servers online, to mint the first run of tokens. It's all in the business plan." He slid a thin, glossy brochure across the table. I glanced at the cover. It was all buzzwords and stock photos of wind turbines. "A business plan," I said. "That's wonderful, Archie. You know, I've seen a lot of business plans in my career." I placed my briefcase on the table and clicked open the 2 polished brass latches. The sound was unnervingly loud in the quiet room. "I've seen plans that are brilliant, plans that are flawed, and plans that are, well, not really plans at all." I pulled out the private investigator's report. It was in a simple, manila folder. I tossed it onto the table, and it landed directly on top of Archie's glossy brochure. "What's that?" my father Lucas asked, his eyes narrowing. "That," I said, "is a real plan, or rather the results of one. I had a little research done, Archie, on your massive opportunity." Archie's face, which had been a mask of casual confidence, went white. "Your NFT-backed environmental credit system," I continued, my voice sharp and clear. "It doesn't exist. Your servers are a rented cloud storage account, and your investors," I tapped the folder. "They're not waiting for a revolution. They're waiting for their money back." My mother gasped, her hand flying to her chest. "Abigail, what on earth are you talking about? That is a lie." "Am I lying, Archie?" I fixed my gaze on him. "Am I lying about Dr. Alastair, or the $200,000 you borrowed from his retirement fund? Is it a lie that he's threatening to go to the district attorney? Is that why you really need $5 million, not to mint tokens, but to stop yourself from being sued into oblivion?" Archie shot to his feet, his chair scraping violently against the floor. You have no right, you spied on me, you spied on your own family. You called me here to demand $5 million. I shot back, my own voice rising for the first time. You called me, after 5 years of silence, not to reconnect, but to use me as your personal ATM to clean up your mess. I have every right to know what I'm investing in. She's right, Archie, my father said, his voice a low growl. Is it true what she's saying about Alistair? Archie's face crumpled. The bravado, the visionary persona, evaporated in an instant, replaced by the terrified, petulant child I'd always known. He doesn't understand the market. It was a dip. It was temporary. I just need a bridge to get to. To get to my wallet, I finished for him. This is not how this was supposed to go, Samantha whispered, her eyes wide with panic, looking back and forth between her husband and her son. This was supposed to be a celebration. It was supposed to be an ambush, Mom, I said, my voice dropping, all the heat vanishing, replaced by ice. You saw the Porsche, you saw the headlines, and you thought, finally, she's useful. You didn't call to ask how I was. You didn't call to say you were sorry. You called to collect. I stood up, my chair making no sound on the thick rug. You wanted to talk about family support. You wanted to talk about my surprise. You're right, I have one. I reached into my briefcase again, past the Pies report. I pulled out the second folder. This one was bound in rich, dark blue leather, matching my car. You want to know what I did with my money, the money you're all so excited about. I opened the portfolio. You see, you all assumed I was just a naive girl who got a big check. You forgot something, the most crucial thing. I paused, looking each of them in the eye. You forgot, I said, that I'm smart, smarter than all of you. I laid the first page on the table. It was the cover sheet, embossed with the name of the law firm and the title. The Abigail Mason Foundation for Women in STEM. Finalized, notarized, and filed with the state as of yesterday morning. Their faces were blank, they didn't understand. What is this? My father asked, squinting at the paper. This, I said, is my $15 million surprise. The silence that followed was heavier and more profound than the 5 years of estrangement. My mother, Samantha, was the first to break it, her voice a reedy, confused whisper. A foundation, what? What does that mean, like, for charity? Exactly, I said, a cold smile touching my lips. The entire liquid payout from the acquisition, $15 million. It's all in an irrevocable charitable trust. The principal is locked. Forever. The interest will be used to fund scholarships for underprivileged women in science, technology, engineering, and math. I let the words land. Scholarships, my father, Lucas, repeated, his face turning a dull, mottled red. You gave it away. I didn't give it away, Dad, I said, tapping the leather-bound document. I invested it. I invested it in young women who were just like me. Brilliant, ambitious, driven, and alone. The kind of women who don't have a family willing to remortgage their house to fund their image. The barb hit its mark. My mother flinched as if I'd slapped her. But, Archie, she stammered, her panic rising. Your brother, he needs you, we need you, this is family. No, I said, my voice cutting through her desperation. This is a business transaction. You made that clear 5 years ago. We don't mix family and money, Abigail, it's tacky. I quoted her own words back to her, and she visibly recoiled. I'm just following your rules, Mom. Archie, who had been frozen in a state of shock, finally exploded. It wasn't the calculated anger of a strategist. It was the raw, primal tantrum of a child. You can't do that, he shrieked, his face crimson. You can't, that's our money, that's family money. Our money, I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Where were you when I was working 100-hour weeks? Where were you when I was sleeping on an air mattress in my office because I couldn't afford rent and payroll? Where were any of you? That money isn't ours. It's mine, and I've already spent it. You selfish. Archie lunged, not at me, but at the portfolio on the table, as if destroying the paper could undo the reality. My father grabbed his arm. "Stop it, Archie. Sit down, this isn't helping." "But Archie was sobbing now, great, heaving, ugly sobs of pure, thwarted greed. "She did this on purpose. She did this to ruin me." "She's right, Archie," Lucas said, but his voice was dead. He wasn't defending me, he was stating a fact. He looked at me, his salesman's mask gone, and all I saw was a defeated old man. "Alistair called me this morning. He's filing the lawsuit on Monday. He's going to the press. He said you're a fraud." The confession hung in the air. So they all knew. The entire family meeting, the beef roast, the good china, it was a desperate, choreographed play to get my money before the world found out their golden child was a common thief. "So you knew," I whispered. "All of you, you knew he was in trouble, you knew he'd conned your friends, and you sat here, smiling at me, telling me about his massive opportunity." My voice trailed off as the full, ugly weight of their deception settled on me. "You weren't just asking me to invest, you were trying to make me an accomplice. You were trying to use my money, the money I earned, to cover up his crimes." "It was a misunderstanding," Samantha shrieked, her carefully constructed, lifestyle facade cracking to reveal the raw panic beneath. "Archie is a good boy, he thinks big. You have to help him, Abigail. You have to, you can. You can get the money back, can't you? From this foundation." "It's an irrevocable trust, Mom," I said, enunciating each syllable as if to a child. "It means it can't be revoked. It's gone. Legally, it's not mine anymore. It belongs to the foundation. It belongs to the future." I watched as the last glimmer of hope died in their eyes. I saw the precise moment their greed curdled into pure, unadulterated hatred. My mother's face, a moment ago pleading, hardened into a mask of contempt I'd never seen before. "You were always a cold, strange child," she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "Always with your books and your computers. Never warm like Archie. We did our best, but you were always lacking. You're not our daughter. Not really." The words, which would have shattered me 5 years ago, now bounced harmlessly off the armor I'd built. I calmly began to place the documents back into my briefcase, the Pies report, the leather-bound trust. "You're right about one thing, Mom," I said, closing the latches with a final, definitive click. "We're not family, we're just people who happen to be related, and I'm done mixing business with whatever this is." I stood there for a moment, watching the three of them. My father, slumped in his chair, suddenly looking ancient. My brother, sobbing into his hands, a 35-year-old child. And my mother, glaring at me with a hatred that was more honest than any "I love you" she had ever uttered. This wasn't a family, it was a failed business. And I was walking away from the table. My age. And was on the doorknob when my mother's voice, now stripped of all its fake warmth and left with a jagged, desperate edge, cut through the room. "You will not walk out that door, Abigail, after everything we've done for you." I turned, one eyebrow raised. "Everything you've done for me? This should be interesting. Please enlighten me." The room was a pressure cooker, and I had just cranked the heat. This was the showdown. This was the final, public, or at least semi-public reckoning. "We raised you," she cried, her voice rising. "We put a roof over your head, we fed you. We paid for that computer camp you loved so much." "You mean the one I got a full scholarship for?" I replied, my voice dangerously quiet. "The one you complained about because it meant you had to drive me 20 minutes out of your way twice a week. You are an ungrateful, selfish." "I am ungrateful?" I took a step back into the room. The shock had worn off, and now all that was left was a cold, righteous anger. "Let's talk about grateful, shall we? Let's talk about the roof over my head, the one you remortgaged, the one you gambled on him." I pointed at Archie, who was still hiding his face. "We did that to help your brother," Lucas snapped, finding his voice. "Something you, clearly, know nothing about." "You didn't help him," I said, walking slowly toward the table, my briefcase in hand. "You enabled him. You taught him that actions have no consequences. You taught him that he could fail and lie and even steal, and that someone else would always be there to clean it up." First, it was you. And now you expected it to be me. I looked at Archie. Get up, Archie. He flinched, looking up at me, his eyes red and puffy. What? Get up, you want to be a visionary. You want to be a CEO? Then stand up and look at the person you tried to con. He struggled to his feet, a pathetic, trembling wreck. You didn't just need 5 million, did you? I said. You needed to silence your investors. You needed to stop them from talking. Because if they talked, they wouldn't just sue you. They'd sue you, Dad. My father's blood drained from his face. That's not true. Isn't it? You're the one who introduced him to Dr. Alistair. You're the one who vouched for him at the golf club. You consult for his company. The Pi report says you're listed as a managing partner on 2 of his shell corporations. You're not just his father, Lucas. You're his partner. His actions are your actions. His fraud is your fraud. My father collapsed back into his chair as if his strings had been cut. The realization hit him. I hadn't just protected my money. I had exposed his liability. My mother, Samantha, looked at her husband, then at her son, and then at me. Her face was a terrifying mask of comprehension and rage. You did this, she whispered. You came here, with your reports and your traps. You wanted this. You wanted to destroy us. No, I said, my voice final. You destroyed yourselves. I'm just the one who held up the mirror. I turned and walked out of the dining room. I didn't run. I walked. I could hear my mother start to scream, a primal, frustrated wail. I could hear Archie yelling, "What are we going to do? What are we going to do?" I opened the front door. The cool night air hit my face, and it felt like the first clean breath I'd taken in my life. Abigail. My mother had followed me onto the porch, her face contorted. You can't just leave. You're ruining this family. I stopped at the top of the walkway and turned to face her one last time, standing under the warm glow of the porch light. The family was already ruined, Mom, I said, my voice clear and carrying in the quiet night. You just papered over the cracks with money, first yours and now you thought with mine. But the foundation? Well, the foundation was always rot. A neighbor, walking his dog, paused on the sidewalk, watching the drama unfold. Samantha noticed him and her face flushed with humiliation. The blogger who curated a perfect life was being exposed on her own front lawn. That was the moment, the final, triumphant break. It wasn't my anger, it was her shame. She, who lived for appearances, was finally facing a public consequence. Go, she hissed, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper, her eyes darting to the neighbor. Get out, and don't you ever come back. Don't worry, I said. I pulled the keys to the Porsche from my pocket. They chimed softly. I have absolutely no intention of doing so. I walked down the path, got into my car, and started the engine. As I pulled away from the curb, I saw them in the rearview mirror, the 3 of them, clustered in the doorway, a perfect portrait of their own downfall. They weren't a family. They were co-conspirators in a failed enterprise, and I was, finally, free. The fallout was immediate, and it was total. Dr. Alistair, along with 2 other investors, filed their lawsuit the following Monday, just as my father had feared. But it wasn't just a civil suit. Emboldened by the fact that the family safety net, me, was clearly not going to intervene, they forwarded their evidence to the district attorney's office. The Pi report I had commissioned had been thorough, the case against Archie, and by extension my father, was overwhelming. Archie was charged with fraud and securities violations. Lucas, as a listed partner who had actively solicited investments, was named as a co-conspirator. The perfect family image my mother had spent her entire life curating was obliterated in a single, public court filing. To avoid a trial, they sold the house that was already heavily mortgaged, to pay for their legal fees and a fraction of the restitution they owed. Samantha's lifestyle blog went dark. The online comments had become a torrent of ridicule from the very community she had tried so hard to impress. Their social circle evaporated overnight. There is nothing high society dislikes more than the smell of desperation and, worse, public financial scandal. I watched it all from a distance, a neutral observer to a collapse I had not caused but had simply refused to prevent. My lawyers handled the one or two desperate, rambling attempts at contact from their legal team. I felt no joy. No, I told you so. I just felt quiet. The deafening noise of their dysfunction, which had been the background radiation of my entire life, was finally gone. 2 months later, I sat in the auditorium of my old community college. The hall was buzzing with energy. I was in the front row, not as a donor or a VIP, but just as Abigail. The dean walked to the podium. And now, we are so proud to announce the very first recipient of the Abigail Mason Foundation Scholarship for Women in STEM. He called a name, a young woman named Sarah. She looked to be about 19, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and elation. She walked to the podium, clutching a piece of paper. I don't know what to say," she began, her voice trembling. "My family, we don't have a lot. I've been working 2 jobs trying to save up. I have this idea for a new kind of water filtration system. Everyone said it was a long shot. Everyone said I should just be practical." She took a deep breath, looking out at the crowd. "This scholarship, it's not just the money, it's that someone somewhere read my idea and thought it was worth a chance. Someone I've never even met. Whoever you are," she said, her voice cracking with emotion, "you haven't just paid for my tuition. You've changed my life, thank you." I sat in the front row, and for the first time in months, the tears that came to my eyes weren't for the family I'd lost. They were for the future I was building. After the ceremony, I went to find my car. As I was walking, I heard a quiet ma'am. It was Sarah. She was standing there, clutching her certificate. I just wanted to say thank you again," she said, still buzzing. "Your name is on the scholarship, Abigail Mason. I wanted to thank you in person." I smiled. "You earned it, Sarah. I just read the application. Your idea is brilliant. Don't let anyone ever tell you to be practical." "I won't," she said, her eyes shining with the same fire I remembered having at her age. "I'm going to change the world." "I know you are," I said. I got into my Porsche, the same car that had started this all. As I drove away, I realized the $15 million wasn't gone. It was just getting started. It was in Sarah's idea. It was in the future of all the women like her. My parents had tried to take my money to save their past, a past built on lies and entitlement. I had used it to fund a future. And as I merged into traffic, I felt a profound, unshakable sense of peace. The tables hadn't just turned. I had taken the table and everything on it and given it to people who truly deserved a seat.